Hello, and welcome back to the third episode of our algebra course. In episode 2, we talked about the additive and multiplicative properties of addition and multiplication. In this episode, we're going to talk about fractions. Fractions pop up an awful lot in algebra, so understanding how they work and what they are is going to be very beneficial to us as we move forward. Okay, so just to start off, we're going to talk about what a basic fraction is. And a fraction is just part of a whole number. So for instance, 1/4, that's a fraction, right? It's less than 1, it's part of a whole number, and it has two parts to it. It has a numerator, which is the top part of the fraction, and it also has a denominator, which is the bottom part. Okay. A common misconception I feel like a lot of students have when they're talking about fractions is that they think whole numbers cannot be written as fractions, and that's just not the case. Let's take a look at 1 here. 1 can also be written as a fraction. If you wanted to write it as a fraction, you just have to write the same number in the numerator as you do the denominator. So for instance, if I wrote 5 on top and 5 on the bottom, okay, that's 1. If you typed 5 divided by 5 into your calculator, 1 is what the answer would be. Okay, so whole numbers can also be written as fractions. So any number you can think of can be written as a fraction. That's good to know moving forward with algebra. The next important thing we need to know about fractions is how to add them. Okay, when you're adding fractions, it's important that the denominators are the same. The numerators don't matter, but the denominators have to be the same. If they're not, you can't add those fractions. So in this instance here, we've got 1/2 plus 1/2. Our denominators are the same, they're both 2. And so to add these fractions, you're just going to add the numerators together. So 1 plus 1 is 2, so you would get 2/2, which is 1. Okay. Now let's take a look at an example when the numerator or the denominators are not the same. So here I've got 1/4, and I'm going to add 1/3. Okay. In this example, the denominators are not the same. 1 is 4 and 1 is 3. So what we need to do is find a common denominator. A common denominator is a number that both denominators could be multiplied to equal. So for instance, for 4 and 3, a common denominator might be 12. Right? So we have to change these fractions to twelfths. So what we'll do is we'll write our new problem over here. What number times 4 equals 12? Well, that's 3. So we'll make it 12 on the bottom, and we'll multiply 1 by 3 and get 3. 3/12 is 1/4. It's the same number. We're just writing it in a different way so that we can do our math problem. We're going to do the same thing to 1/3. 4 times 3 equals 12. So we'll multiply 1 times 4 as well, and we'll get 4/12. 3/12 plus 4/12, that's 7/12. And now we've added those unlike denominator numbers. For subtraction, fractions are subtracted the same way. You have to make sure there is a common denominator. Okay. I won't go over an example of that, that's just like adding. Next, though, we're going to multiply fractions. When we multiply fractions, the denominator doesn't matter anymore. They can be different, that's fine. So here we've got 1/5 times 1/6. When you multiply the numerators times each other and the denominators by each other. So in this example, on the top, we have 1 times 1, which is 1. And on the bottom, we have 5 times 6, which is 30. So the answer to 1/5 times 1/6 is 1/30th. In this example, we don't need to have a common denominator, right? Because we're multiplying our denominators together. For division, however, it is a little different. Let's try this. For division, we've got 3/4, and we're going to divide it by 1/2. When you divide two fractions, you have to flip the second fraction. How do we do that? Well, we're going to rewrite our problem. And to flip it, we're just going to put the denominator up top and the numerator below. And then, instead of dividing, we're going to multiply. So, just like we did above, we've got 3 times 2, which is 6, and 4 times 1, which is 4. And that's going to simplify to 1 1/2. Those are some basic fraction things that we're going to need to be able to do in algebra. You're going to have to be able to add fractions, subtract them, multiply, and divide them. And you're going to have to be able to flip them. When you flip a fraction, it's called the inverse. So if you ever see the word inverse in your algebra book, inverse is just flipping it. So you're flipping the fraction over. You can also invert whole numbers. So for instance, if we needed to ask to be inverse of 4, you would just put 4 in the denominator spot. So the inverse would be 1/4. Those are some basic fractions. Tune in next episode and we'll talk about decimals and percentages. Thanks for watching. Bye.